This show is brought to you by Databril, the scalable Amazon PPC management for large Amazon sellers and brands. Visit sellersessions.com/agency for more details. Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today is a special episode. We've reached 100 podcasts. I want to say a big thank you to my partner Richard because he gets to do all the work in the background and he doesn't get as much praise as he should. I want to say thank you to Mo, who does all our editing as well, and of course all the guests. So today we've got a special lineup. We have Anthony Lee.
Hello.
Sean Smith.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Kevin King's back.
How you doing, everybody?
And of course Lee Rand's here as well. How you doing, Lee Rand?
Doing good, thank you.
Excellent. So guys, I want to say a big thank you to you guys as well, because the show is about content. It's not about me. It's not about the brand. It's about bringing the best content. Our goal from the very, very beginning was to put content front and center above everything else. So hopefully everyone's been enjoying the show after, last couple of years. I think we started back in January 2016. We started as a webinar. I think Kevin was on our first webinar. So it's the second week into January. And then after the webinars, they started to crash everywhere. And we're losing everyone on the webinar. So we decided, right, we're going to have to fix this up. So we developed the YouTube channel. And then from the YouTube channel, we went from there when we built up the blog. And then from building up the blog, we decided the last part of the jigsaw was to do a podcast. That was October last year. Since then, we've been growing month on month, double-digit growth. We started at 40%, and we're still growing about 20% month on month. So you may have seen us slow down a little bit in terms of video on the YouTube channel, is because our focus has been the podcast where the majority of our audience is. Okay, so let's get into the show. First things first, Anthony, talk to me about the A10 algorithm I keep hearing about, please.
Why do you keep hearing?
Go on, talk to me. I want to know about it because I'm reading it now in articles and everything.
It's not real. It's not real. It's not a thing. This is like this magic fabricated clickbait article or two. And the Amazon community, man, they're so starving for information that they just were like, oh, this must be a thing. It's not a thing. And the thing is I even wrote an article about it not being a thing. And somebody called me out and was like, why are you right? You made up A10. I never heard about that. And then here we are months later, and some guy with a course comes out with more information about this thing that I wrote about. And I was just like, I told you that people thought it was a thing.
And don't forget about the pie chart, that breaks down the exact ranking system of the A10, because that was in a Facebook groups, and that was the gospel, but so
yes,
that was shared everywhere. And I went really quick and adjusted everything I'm doing based on that, because that was like, holy shit, that was revolutionary. It's always been the A9. There's never been an A1 or an A3 or an A5 or A10. It's the A9.
Okay, right. So next question I want to talk about is branding. So let me set it up here in terms of branding. I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day about branding. Now, my take on branding is this, right? I think branding is important. I think you should grow a brand. But at this stage, we're not Nike. I can't tell you 10 Amazon brands outside of Amazon Basics or Anchor. I understand the importance of branding. The bit that gets me about the branding thing is I find that there's a lot of consultants out there that sell branding services, but they're not measurable. And it's almost like if you can't do the technical marketing, you can fall into the space of branding. What is your take on branding, and where do you guys go with it?
I'll say that, when I think about the products I buy on Amazon, I can't remember the last 10 brands or 5 brands of products that I bought, unless, like you said, it's a big brand, and I remember it like a Nike. But a lot of the stuff that I buy is not major brands or could be private label, and I don't remember the brand, right? So if that's the case from a customer standpoint, then you have to realize that chances are after somebody buys your product, nobody remembers who you are, right? So I think, like you said, we shouldn't put all our efforts just into this branding thing, right? I think the 80-20 of success on Amazon is focusing on, getting your product in search, doing PPC right, getting visibility. And then I think it makes sense to, if you have a successful product, to try to build more ancillary products around that, so that when people click on your storefront, they can see your other products, or you can have, frequently bought together, or customers who bought this also bought this. And it makes sense to build a brand. But like you said, I wouldn't put all my focus on this like branding thing of, trying to I wouldn't put a lot of dollars into just like branding, what is my brand name going to be? People sometimes think about that for months before launching a product. And like really on Amazon, it doesn't really matter. If you look at the Chinese sellers and their brand names and they're selling like tons of product, they don't have great brand names, right? So I think the 80-20 of success is, you could focus on the branding, but let that be a small percentage of your time. The 80 part is the rankings and the visibility.
Yeah, I agree that branding is, some people think branding is putting a logo on a product or getting a trademark and they think that's their branding. That's not branding. Branding is creating an emotion and a feeling and a name and a product. So when someone says Nike or someone says Apple, an emotion or a feeling immediately comes to mind. That takes a lot of money and a lot of years typically. So I agree with Liron that branding is not is not important at all on Amazon. I think someone just came out with a study not too long ago. It said like 70% of Amazon Prime shoppers don't care about the brand, and that's what makes Amazon so beautiful for people like us as Amazon sellers, is that we can compete against against these quote unquote big brands. You can't do that in a normal space. If you're trying to get into Walmart, onto the shelves of Walmart or something, the buyers over there are like, oh no, you're not a Nike, you're a nobody. You're not running TV ads, you're not doing this, you're not doing all this support. It's much more difficult to get in. But versus on Amazon, it's a level playing field, and that's the beauty about it. And so I agree, you shouldn't spend a lot of time working on a brand. I mean, and like Danny said, it's like, how many Amazon brands can you actually name? And how many of your last 10 products, like Leon said, do you actually remember what the brand was? I don't. I don't care. And I think a lot of people put too much energy in doing that, and you're better served to go and spend that time finding other products and extending the brand, extending your product line.
I would also, point out to, if you kind of like and want to hear more about this stuff, there's a professor from NYU, Scott Galloway. He's also the founder of a company called L2, and he's got this YouTube video where he talks about like the era of the big brand is kind of falling, right? And it is because of Amazon, because people searching by keywords and not by brand names anymore. And like Kevin said, that's exactly like why we can have success on Amazon, because people are searching by keywords.
So I actually agree with them. However,
go on.
You know me, I love to play devil's advocate. Okay, So here's the thing. I've actually done a lot of research and written about this very topic. So kind of bringing it into perspective as far as where I come from in this. I started out big on the whole create a brand, create a legacy for my family. I fell in love with my brand, and it failed ultimately. So I learned a valuable lesson that you should never actually fall in love with the brand. And then I started adopting a lot of this thinking, the brand doesn't really matter that much. You should focus on cash flow because that's your greatest opportunity on Amazon. But I started digging deeper, and then, I'm learning both sides of the fence, right? So for the majority of people, that cash flow is what's important. The next product that they can get in at the right time that really takes off is what's important, because otherwise you could end up in a situation where I was nearly in, and that's where the brand fails and you don't have any more money, and then your business is gone. However, if you do research on, I guess, behavior of online shoppers, while most Amazon shoppers are actually open to accepting unknown brands, the majority driver for online sales is not brand loyalty, but brand recognition. Research and studies have been done to show that your average online shopper, the reason they make the decision is because they remember the brand, which is the reason why, even on Amazon, while we do have a good shot at competing, the big brands still win the majority of the sales in most big categories. Like, you can go into niches where that's not the case. But if you, for example, I'll give you a prime example. This is the world that I just came out of. Go to Amazon, look up the keyword baby carrier. Every seller on page one is Amazon because it's a big brand. And that's where the big brands are winning. And that's an example. There's probably several more like that. So, in light of that, then obviously the argument that these gentlemen were making were, well, the average person doesn't have the dollars to keep up with that. So, and I agree. Until I started actually like experiencing as an Amazon buyer situations that kind of did make me, I guess, stop and go, wow. And prime example, I don't know the owner. I do know, however, that he's in one of the Facebook groups because I mentioned this and he was like, hey, thanks for the shout out. But there's a company called Grillaholics who I actually bought a grill mat from. And I was so blown away by their presentation, their follow-up, the packaging, everything, that I actually remember that brand. And that's when I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, while it doesn't make sense for most people to do that whole, put the money and put the effort into branding, at the same time, this is possible. This is doable. This guy's a third-party seller. It's a private labeler that did this. And I probably will only buy grill products from that brand if they have it from now on because of that. And I want to have that effect on people. So then the question becomes, well, at what point do you start tipping the scale on that? And then I want to leave this conversation with one last point. Once upon a time, I was in Eastern Europe with Will Chernlin, and we were having a real conversation about selling brands because he was in a situation where he was witnessing the sale of one brand, and then we had a client that wanted to sell his brand. And he was telling me some statistics he had dug up. Apparently, at the time, this was about a year ago, and I'm sure not much has changed since then, but apparently at the time, Amazon brands were selling for a multiple of like 1.5 to 2 at most. And the reason why is because there was no guarantee that it would actually survive, and the only platform they sold on was Amazon. It was just, and a lot of venture capital guys, like that's what they refer to them as. It's an Amazon brand. Oh, you have an Amazon brand. Okay, here you go. Here's your 1.75 multiple. Be happy with that. But and he was concerned because that's what it looked like his client was going to end up with. But he was witnessing this other dude sell his brand, and they sold it for an 8 times multiple, and it was a clothing brand. And we were sitting down, and he's like, I wonder why that happened. And I told him, I said, I can tell you exactly why that happened. Because that brand sold on all the marketplaces, had their own website, also had what I call brand assets, Instagram following, Facebook following, etc. And the VC guys that came in to buy that brand recognized it as an actual brand. Like, this is a brand. We can put these products on shelves one day. When they look at most of these Amazon brands, they don't think that.
I think there's a difference between a brand and an audience, right? So I think I would recommend for people, once they start having some success on Amazon, to build an audience, like social media and an email list and all that. I think are great assets. But that's not necessarily to me the same as spending money like on branding, right? I think there's a distinction, and I think that audience is an asset, and that audience is worth money, right? Because you can launch new products to them. You don't have to do deep discounts if they love your brand. You can generate external traffic. You're not solely relying on Amazon, right? All that is worth money, right? So I think yes, spend the effort on building an audience, yes, but not necessarily, on you're not gonna put up a TV ad, right, for brand awareness, right? Or you're not gonna spend money on headline ads that are not performing for a year because at an A cost of 100% because of branding, right? So I think sort of that's a good distinction to think about, right? Branding versus audience, and thinking about building an audience, but that not necessarily branding.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I want to clarify that point. So I just want to make sure that I understand you, Lee Rand. So what you're saying is that you think that, like, if we're talking about branding as this whole, right? You're
right.
saying building what I call brand assets, which is an audience. You're saying building an audience is worth the money, but running Google AdWords ads strictly for brand awareness to a complete negative across all 50 states would be a waste at least the early stages for an Amazon seller. Okay.
Right. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that distinction was clear.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that was my take on branding as well, because I have a vision of a load of corporate people standing in a boardroom analyzing over a logo when they haven't thought about the product they're trying to put on the shelf. That stuff, for me, is a complete waste of time until you get to a certain stage. And I think when people put branding front and center and forget everything else, I think that's a crying shame. I think branding plays its part. You shouldn't have shitty packaging and artwork. You should be able to produce good enough products that go into stores and stuff. But you need to draw the line under it. It's like, don't confuse branding as all forms of marketing. There's so many different areas that you need to cover from my point.
I agree with Anthony there, like on the packaging as example, the Grillaholics, that's a good example. A lot of people should follow. That's one of the key, and what you just spoke on, Dan, that's one of the key differentiators on Amazon is your packaging. So many people don't spend time on packaging, and you eat with your eyes first. And just like Anthony, when he got the package in the mail and he's like, holy cow, this looks cool, and I haven't even opened the box yet. It's the same thing like Apple does. So that kind of stuff is super, super important. But also speaking to his point on the multiples, the conversation that he and Will had, right now, and I think this is true for the next couple years, is probably going to be the best time to sell your Amazon business. I think the real money right now, and as an Amazon seller, is in actually selling your business, not in continuing your business. And I think there's a sweet spot for the next, you're always going to be able to do it, but I think there's a sweet spot for the next couple years because private equity is waking up to this. So, there's a lot of outside people. And so if you have a brand, that can add some brand equity and that can add some value, but it's so difficult to get to that point for most sellers. It's, that's the less than 1% that will actually get to that point. You're better off focusing on the other things. And I can tell you now that, there's on the same subject, people are always like, well, you need to diversify off of Amazon. You need to get your Shopify site up. You need to get on Walmart. You need to what happens if Amazon shuts your account? Well, I can tell you right now, if Amazon shuts down your account, for most people that are off Amazon, you're still fucked. So, and I deal with some private equity people as an advisory role that are buying a lot of businesses now, and the multiples are all over the place. Typically, the lower the sale, the average sale, I think last month, there's a guy that puts out of Ireland that puts out statistics on this. It was like $200,000. So typically that's a lower multiple, 1.5 to 2. But you start getting up into the guys that are selling for 10, 15, 20 million. Those are often the higher 6 to 10 multiples. So that can play a factor there. But I know most of the serious investors don't really care if you're off Amazon unless it's more than 30% of your sales, more than 30% of your overall company-wide sales are from Walmart and your own site and stuff. It really doesn't play a huge factor in the multiple or what they pay for the sophisticated investor. You get an individual investor, mom and pop, they may think, oh, this is cool. He's got, I see it some of these things. It says I've got 20,000, on Empire Flippers or one of these. Our website, our private store gets 20,000 hits a month. And I'm like, well, hits? You know what even hits means? Hits means every image and everything on the page. A hit is not a visit. And you go look it up in SimilarWeb, and their traffic is, their site is like number 3,680,000 or something. So the unsophisticated investor will look at that, but the sophisticated don't.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin, since you have experience with private equity guys, then I have a question for you. Do you, just for the sake of having the numbers out there, do you have any idea of how significant a difference it does make if you actually manage to grow over 30% of your sales off Amazon?
Yeah, it can make, I don't have an exact number. I can't say it makes a 10% or a 1x, it goes from a 2x to a 3x, but they do put a value on it. There's a lot of variables in there, but they do put a value on that. But I can't give you an exact how much that is that.
If I'm buying a business and somebody has, Shopify 30-40% of their sales, to me, that's super impressive. And
well, there's another thing, and I've spoke about this before. We're talking about this on and off Amazon thing. Let's just say you started on Amazon. So all of your product selection is purely based on operating on the Amazon marketplace. So then when you take it off Amazon, what happens? Because there's nothing really unique about it in theory. Yeah.
Well, I actually tell people some people are starting, I say maybe you should start on it unless you're well funded or good, like what Anthony said at SEO, or have someone on your team that's super good at that. You should start on Amazon, sell on Amazon, prove the concept, and then take that data. Download. You're given all that data as a third party seller. Take that data and create your lookalike audiences and create all that kind of stuff, and then go out there and start pushing that to your Shopify site if that's what you want to build. You have an advantage there.
I think the key point there is you've got to get to 150, 200 grand a month before you even think about going off Amazon and building sites and working out, your acquisition path and how you're going to acquire those customers. And I think one of the best things you can do is consumable products, because at least you're paying for the lead once. You're not paying for it over and over again if they come back and purchase. Sean, you've been a bit quiet. Do you want to step up?
Sure. Yeah. So I've worked with a couple organizations that do acquisitions in the Amazon space, and I have a few friends that are kind of involved in that space. And Kevin's right. They're really going bullish on it. They like it because of the multiple, and they can roll them up as well if they're similar products and sell them for like a better multiple. And so like in terms of like the branding stuff, I think it depends on the individual's goals and the company's goals. I think they have to know, you got to have monthly, quarterly, annual goals. And those numbers will like guide the way. And so like branding, like when it comes to like the people I work with, the brands I work with, I don't focus too much on branding, mainly because that's not like my specialty. I agree with the packaging bit. But like in terms of comparing yourself to bigger brands like Target and Apple, like those people are working like crazy hours and they're putting in a lot of money. And a lot of them have like received funding as well. And so, when you receive funding, you give up equity, you work with investors, things like that. That's a different beast. And so, if you want to go into like building a bigger business like that, it's a serious consideration. So like, I just focus on like, I really like working with like people who are really focused on a niche. And a lot of Amazon sellers, when they go off platform, can be very disappointed because the return on investment on Amazon search is a lot higher than any other, like e-commerce is roughly like, 1%, 2% is like a good conversion rate. Amazon's like clocking in at like 40 and their PPC is like 10 compared to like, AdWords, which is way lower.
Sure.
I think the average conversion rate on Amazon, I just saw something, is like 8.3% average.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Across the board. And typical.
That's still pretty huge because e-commerce is like.
E-commerce is like 1.7. Something like that.
I think if you're starting out, 0.5 is good conversion rate on the new site. Seriously, if you're just starting out, you've got year one on your
website. Oh,
yeah. If you're building traffic, if you're getting 0.5, that's a good start because people get a lot less than that.
It's really demotivating when you go off channel if you started on Amazon. It's a tough transition mentally and financially. And so, you really got to think about things like that and get mentors, advisors, get into masterminds, just, get like a, make war with a multitude of counsels before you make that move.
Yeah. I come from the direct marketing world of sending out physical catalogs and brochures through the mail. I did that for 20 some odd years, and I'd be thrilled unless it was my in-house customer list of my repeat buyers. Those were 10, 20, 30% response rates. But if it was a cold list or a prospecting list, I was thrilled to death if I got 2%.
Were you a lumpy mail guy? Do some lumpy mail?
Lumpy mail? No lumpy mail.
No lumpy mail?
So this is an interesting topic, but I have to kind of throw the other side of the fence every time. Sorry, that's just my nature. But it's like, I agree, because I tried it, man. I tried to do off-channel stuff, and it was so hard, and I failed miserably. It was just like, what's going on? But then there's a part of me that's looking at it. Like, I know we're talking about this in the scope of, these big brands, they have all of these efforts and that's why they're good at it, unless you're like a big Google SEO guy or whatever. But I'm thinking about, man, you know how many drop shippers are out there and they're killing it with Facebook ads, all of this off of Amazon?
Hold on. No, they tell you that, but
they tell you that, but most of them don't. Most of them get their accounts. Okay. The vast majority, they'll do $200,000 in a month, and then their PayPal account is frozen for 6 months because they can't deliver. People are bitching. They're used to the Amazon model, having it in a couple of days. It takes a month from China.
I'm not talking about the fake gurus. I'm talking about like there are actually legitimately people out there that are making money. I know it's probably another unicorn missing, but my point is there are guys out there that like know how to flip the switch on all of these Facebook ads and create sales that are not Amazon involved. And it's like, okay, well, if they can do that, I just can't help but think like there's a skill that I can acquire. And then what does that mean? That means that I can split my sales 50-50 and then my multiple goes through the roof. Like, I don't know. As a business owner, that's kind of an attractive concept.
But the step that you're missing there, Anthony, goes back to these guys select niches. They're not thinking of Amazon. They're selecting niches where they can go and dominate. We're talking about people taking the products where they found themselves a niche on Amazon to take off of Amazon. So suddenly they're no really any better, because why would someone come to your website when they can go to Amazon? Obviously, all the stuff that you see on, like anything, it's always the top certain amount of percentage that make it work. And drop shipping, I think, is getting tougher and tougher. It's still a good business for some. People will go in and kill it, but can they sustain it? We can run Amazon business for 15 years probably. Amazon's just going to keep on growing.
I'm not saying people should be drop shippers. I'm talking about specifically their skill with Facebook ads. Look,
I agree with Anthony. There's money off of Amazon. Is not the end all be all, and it's not the only place. It's the easiest place. It's the best place, but there's plenty of money that can be made off of Amazon. And maybe even more money than what you can make on Amazon, but it's an entirely different skill set and an entirely different approach.
Definitely.
And I don't, if you want to go after that, so, there's people that are really very good at it, like Anthony said, but that's a whole nother animal. And like you said, Danny, I think you should be at that 6-figure range per month before you start. If Amazon is where you started, before you start even worrying about that.
I think, like Danny said, the people who do that, they're starting the product selection is specifically for a Facebook audience, right? Because, it's going to be difficult to sell like a barbecue glove with a Facebook video maybe, but it might be a lot easier for some kind of viral type product, right? I've seen this like mermaid, makeup set or something, right? Something that's more, that can go more viral. They're going to choose that product for Facebook specifically, versus if you're taking your Amazon product and then trying to bring it to a Facebook audience.
Yeah, you're selling more on emotion on Facebook. You're selling more on emotion and something that's people necessarily aren't searching for. On Amazon, you're more looking for what are people searching for and who can I sit in front of. Versus Facebook, you're more trying to tell them, hey, this is a cool product you should buy. You're educating them and then to buy, versus just serving a need of them looking for something.
Hey guys, that's it for part 1. Please rejoin us in a couple of days' time. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.